What's going on, guys? It's the Bigs Podcast, episode number 115. And today we are going to talk about the Seoul Series that happened. We're going to talk about some demotions, some guys who made the roster, some injuries, all wrapping up spring training here, and a couple of guys who just signed on to rosters to finish it out. With me today from Astoria, Queens, Jay Ferraro. Jay, how are you doing today, my friend?
I'm still a little tired from the Seoul Series, but even more tired from that early Tuesday morning, day one of the free agent frenzy.
Oh man, it was wild. We saw so many things go down. We've seen a couple of moves from each team. You're up to 3 already this week, so it's going to be a long long week for you. Let's dive right into the Soul Series, man. I'll tell you what, coming home from work at 7 a.m. and popping that thing on, it was kind of nice, and it was also kind of annoying. I can't wait for actual baseball games. What'd you think of getting up early with a cup of coffee to watch baseball?
I enjoyed the heck out of it. I think nobody was more victimized than my team as far as starters go with what Burrito did, and then JP the following day, where your Manny Machado just hit an absolute tank off of him. Besides those two guys, I also feel for Ari Nisman and the Yamamoto start. And for
Mhm.
years, I've been told that Ari Nisman doesn't listen to the podcast. But Joe, I think it's a guilty pleasure of his. I think Ari's listening.
Okay. Interesting. I haven't heard that Ari listens to the podcast. Ben has not confirmed that for me. But Ari, if you are listening, yikes on Yamamoto. But before we get into that, let's start with game one. It was the first game of the 2024 season. Yu Darvish versus Tyler Glasnow in the pitching matchup. Lebo versus Josh, as far as the owners of those respective players. Glasnow had a nice little performance here. 5 innings, 2 earned, 4 walks, 3 strikeouts. Darvish, 3 2/3, 1 unearned run, 3 walks, 3 strikeouts, and it really became a bullpen game for San Diego after Darvish left. I mean, it was a big old pie of relief appearances. If you got a piece of it, fantastic. Cosgrove, Eniel De Los Santos, Yuki Matsui, and Wandy Peralta. But then, yeah, you talked about it. Johnny Brito arrived.
Johnny Burrito and Joe, it was a double play to get him out of the inning that somehow went through Jake Cronenworth's glove, broke his glove, then
Mm-hmm.
the floodgates with Mookie and Ohtani after that.
Mm-hmm.
Geez, he was about to get out of that inning. Instead, Cronenworth gets an error on Bobby's bench, by the way. If you want to talk about a divine accident, Bobby not starting Cronenworth for game one, and then we'll talk about what he did at game two. But yeah, I walked away with a loss, which wasn't fun. Burrito's no longer on my squad, as you
Mm-hmm.
know, but I did get 2 relief appearances with also Matsui making his major league debut.
Yeah, man, you got a nice clean inning out of that guy for the relief appearance. Adrian Morihone is the one that ends up giving up all of the runs, but the loss is saddled to Johnny Brito. He gives up a sack, fly, and a single and a walk in his 3 batters. Morihone obviously gets the fielder's choice slash error. I don't know how it was. I don't know how it was called a fielder's choice initially. Like it's very obviously got to be an error. And you're right, on Bobby's bench, really happy accident there. It's 5-2 going bottom 8, and Joe Kelly and Evan Phillips shut it down for the Dodgers. That's all this guy. I picked up Joe Kelly that day. Actually, I picked him up in the free period on Tuesday when I didn't have to burn an ad for him. But he gets me an inning and a relief appearance. Not that I'm going to need it against Ari. He's only got 2 relievers, but it's nice to have it. And the save from Evan Phillips is what I'm going to compete in. Offensive standouts. Brian Lebo's Xander Bogaerts had 2 of the Padres' 4 hits. That's how good the Dodgers pitching was that night. And the Dodgers had
Absolutely
7 hits,
dirty.
all singles. Yeah, they were dirty. Game 2, we get Yoshinobu Yamamoto versus Joe Musgrove. Ari versus Adam in the pitching matchup. And man, you mentioned it. Yamamoto was torched for 5 earned over an inning.
Let me tell you what happened. I'm going to be honest with you. You and I were texting back and forth during game one. I set the alarm for game two, Joe. And when that alarm went off, I said to myself, I can't do this again. I got to stay in bed. But then my mind started racing. I couldn't stay in bed. I turn it on. I see that it's 5-0 Padres. I get really excited because I figure Kim must have been involved. And he was. He had an RBI. He had a sac fly. So there wasn't nothing. But man, oh man, when you talk about what Yamamoto did in that first start, I didn't know what to expect, Joe, but I don't think any of us expected him to be that bad.
Yeah. I was texting with Cody, and it was one of those situations where we were discussing what Yamamoto's draft stock is going to be for anybody who hadn't drafted up through the Seoul Series. So, like, he's going to have this start, and then leagues are drafting, right? Um, he obviously will take a little bit of a tumble, but I don't think this is indicative of what's going to come. This isn't going to be Hideki Irabu. This isn't going to be, some fly by night guy who's going to disappoint. He is absolutely a fantasy ace. This is just a really bad start for him. Musgrove wasn't much better. I mean, he went 2 2/3 with 5 earned and 2 walks and 2 strikeouts. So it became a real bullpen game for the Dodgers this time as Yamamoto departs. They get 2 innings from Michael Grove with 3 earned. They get 2 innings out of Kyle Hurt with an earned run. Alex Vesia on Ben's team, an inning and an earned run. Yarbrough, the hero, an inning and 2/3 with an unearned run, 2 walks and a strikeout, and he ends up getting the win, doesn't he? Or no, the loss. No, Yamamoto gets the loss.
Yamamoto got the loss.
Right. Fire Eisen, an inning and 3 earned runs. That must have hurt.
Ugh. Yeah, that wasn't nice at all. And I picked him up because I wanted to try to get a relief appearance like you did with Joe Kelly, and it backfired. And not only did it backfire in game 2, he was also demoted to the minor leagues today. So that was a punch to the gut and then a left hook to the jaw.
Yeah, that has to hurt. This guy gives you nothing and will not give you anything more. Goodbye. He was only on the roster for this series. It's amazing that that's what's going to happen with this guy. The Padres, they deploy Michael King, and Bobby must have been super ecstatic to see this guy come into the game. 3 1/3 in a relief appearance, 3 earned, 4 hits, 3 strikeouts, and 3 walks and 5 strikeouts. He ends up getting the win, I believe, in this matchup. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, what a play for Bobby. Gets the relief appearance, gets the win. The ERA didn't look great, and he gave up a bomb as well, but he had the K. So Bobby walked away with game 2 with an absolute beast game from Jake Cronenworth, had a triple, all those hits, all those RBIs. Then he gets a relief appearance and the W out of King. And I just want to talk about Michael Grove for a second, Joe,
Sure.
because I was thinking about picking him up. I walked away from the Seoul Series with 4 relief appearances. That's pretty darn good going into opening day against Mike Haber, the juggernaut that is Mike Haber, the returning champion Mike Haber, right? And I thought about Grove, but I really wanted the long play with Shelby Miller. In the Heresy, he's the 3rd guy in line behind Leg and Foley. And I'll tell you something about that appearance from Grove, Joe. When his stuff misses the zone and he fools a batter, it's a K and he looks good. But anything in the strike zone was absolutely pummeled.
Yeah, I was noticing that everything felt like it was a rocket off the bat in this second game. But the park was somehow holding a lot of long fly balls, especially early in the game. Jackson Merrill doubled off the wall that I thought was absolutely a tank, and it was 383 to right field.
Oh, yeah. And I thought Ohtani had a donkey off of Matsui in game 2.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Speaking of, Matsui did relieve Michael King 2/3 of an inning clean. I don't know who Kolek is, but he's probably a free agent. 2/3 of an inning, 2 earned, and a walk. And Robert Suarez in for the finish with the save, an inning and a third, and 2 strikeouts. The score ends 15-11. Padres win. It was a hell of a game. A lot of fun. Offensive standouts, there were many. For the Dodgers, Mookie Betts on Josh's squad, 4 for 5 with a double, a homer, 6 big RBIs, 2 runs, and a walk. For Ben, Will Smith, 4 for 6 with a double and 2 RBIs. On the Padres side, for Bobby, you mentioned it, 4 for 4, 4 RBIs, and a triple. For me, I get the Manny Machado 3-run homer and Luis Campusano going 3 for 6 with 2 doubles, 2 RBIs, and 2 runs scored. And Frank's Jackson Merrill makes his debut overseas. Goes 0 for 3 in the first game, but 2 for 4 with a double in his second game. This was a wild one, man.
Absolutely wild. Jackson Merrill never looked overmatched 1 second at the plate, even in game one when he didn't get a hit. An absolute stud pick by Frank, especially once he has that dual eligibility.
Mm-hmm.
I want to talk about what Benny did here, getting 3 of the other guys in that Dodgers lineup.
Mm-hmm.
It was extremely smart thing for him to do. Both games I'm watching, and they all were coming up at times with guys on base, was able to do things. Will Smith was the star out of the 3. But I want to ask you something. The way we know our commissioner usually constructs a roster,
Mm-hmm.
as good as Max Muncy can be with the home runs and the RBIs, I do think those Ks and those errors is going to be something that really bothers our commissioner as the season goes on. And if Muncy continues to be a liability at third base, and it was just the first 2 games, so we're not going to break out the jump to conclusion, Matt, for all you Office Space fans, but he will potentially lose at bats during the season, later in games for defensive purposes, and possibly even to start games. That's going to be something I think the commissioner thinks about as the season goes on.
Yeah, he was really bad against lefties last year, and there's no reason that. Listen, he's 34, I think, 35 maybe. He's gonna get platooned at some point, whether it starts this year or it'll be next year. At some point, they're gonna start platooning this guy with somebody. But for now, yeah, I think he's safe for 30 homers and 100 RBIs and 100 runs in that lineup. The strikeouts will be annoying, the errors will be annoying, but I don't think that Ben's coming off of Max Muncy, given the way he constructed the lineup with both him and Will Smith in that on that team. It's going to clean up all of the mess made by the superstars ahead of them, and he's got Gavin Lux on the back end to bat ninth in front of the monsters as well. So that's a hell of a team build.
Oh, no doubt about it. And you know what? If Max Muncy strikes out only 3 times versus the 5 times, there's some RBIs there because he came up with runners on a lot in these 2 games. And you know what? It made me think twice about Jason Hayward being out in free agency. And today, when I had to make a move because of various reasons we'll get into, I thought to myself, with dual outfield eligibility, another guy in this Dodgers lineup, especially Joe, when you look at the small sample size, the 300 plus at bats Hayward had a year ago on the Dodgers, all those numbers look pretty good.
Yeah, I was shocked to see him on free agency and yet in the Dodgers lineup for that second game. I was pretty surprised that nobody decided to burn that move and jump on him then. And then we see him get 2 hits that day. And of course he did, because he's Jason Hayward and it's the Dodgers. So listen, it was a wild series. I enjoyed the 2 games. I'm glad we're not going to have to wake up at 6 o'clock in the morning to be watching baseball anymore. But it is weird that we have another week off until we get real games again on Thursday.
Oh, it's definitely weird. I want to just keep going with it. We started it. Let's go. And already now people are getting sent down to AAA. I got hit with 3 different ones today. Some other guys I know Jason did as well. But yeah, like you, I'm ready for Thursday. I'm ready for the docket, and let's go.
Yeah. All right, let's dive into the other news and notes and things that have happened around the league. The biggest thing that we are going to talk about, and we would be remiss if we didn't, Ipe Mizuhara, the interpreter for Shohei Ohtani, was fired and is under investigation by the FBI for alleged illegal gambling and upwards of $4.5 million from Ohtani's account being wired to an alleged gambling ring. This is huge. Mizuhara and other sources say that Ohtani doesn't gamble and that the wire transfers were for what he had racked up. Ohtani didn't place any bets. He doesn't gamble. So this is all falling on the interpreter. He states he didn't know this type of activity was illegal And Shohei was never involved, never placed bets. He took all the responsibility and, of course, is out on his ass on a job. The Dodgers had no further comment after the termination, and MLB sources say that MLB sources told ESPN they were gathering facts and they'll see if there will be an investigation, but nothing is certain. Jay, if you are the Ohtani owner in Frank's case, are you scared right now?
I'm sure Frank doesn't like that this news came out because it could potentially lead to a suspension or what have you. But the truth of the matter is, Major League Baseball is going to do everything to make it look like Ohtani didn't do anything because maybe he didn't do anything. And truthfully, I don't really care about this news, Joe. For me, it's not between the lines. And unless there is going to be a suspension, it really doesn't matter to me because of the fact that are we saying that Ohtani, while he was being the best baseball player in the history of the game, he was also betting on baseball and all these other sports? I just don't believe it to be true. I don't want it to be true. And unless Major League Baseball comes out and says, yeah, Ohtani did this and he's going to be suspended, I don't see it having an impact at all on the rest of the season. It stinks that the news had to come out during the celebration of baseball that was the Seoul Series. And certainly having to talk about that during the game was a little bit of a dark cloud, but it didn't take away from how beautiful those two games were. So if I was Frank, I certainly wouldn't like it, but I don't think it's anything Frank has to be concerned with.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like this is going to be anything that'll fall in Ohtani's lap unless, in fact, it's proven that he was involved. And then that's a whole different can of worms to open up. But from all reports, it sounds like Ohtani's not involved. Things are going to just move forward and he's going to get a new interpreter. Now, the question of whether or not that $4.5 million was a gift or it was stolen are two completely different reports. We'll have to wait and see what the FBI comes up with in that scenario. In happier news, the Rangers signed a pitcher. No, it's not Jordan Montgomery. They signed Michael Lorenzen, 1 year, $4.5 million. He's a free agent currently. Any interest?
No interest for me. I do see this guy getting gobbled up, especially that he's SP, RP eligible. They're going to have to build him up. I do think he eventually takes Cody's spot in the rotation, but no interest from me. But certainly a guy because of that team is going to be rostered very, very quickly once everyone starts paying attention to the league. I've noticed a little bit if you didn't have guys in those two matchups in Seoul, maybe you weren't paying as close attention with how much time was between draft day and actual opening day this coming week. I was surprised, though, Joe, that no trades happened. I certainly had talked to a manager about something. We had something worked out that was a good old fashioned fantasy baseball trade. It would have been fair for both sides. The commissioner wouldn't have to have had any inquiries on why this trade was happening. But in the end, I decided it wasn't a move that I needed to make. I'm sure you've talked to some managers in regards to trades, but are you as surprised as I am that no trades have happened so far?
No, not really. I think everybody's being really disciplined here to start the season. It's one of those feeling out processes that okay, the season hasn't started yet. Let me get a week in and see what we're going to do. I'm not too surprised that nothing has happened. If we get past the first weekend and nothing's happened, then I think we can start saying, all right, who's it going to be? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and I think it speaks more to team builds and how all our managers they went and got the guys that they wanted to compete with this year. And sure, we've had to shave some guys off our roster, some of us because of injuries and guys sending down to AAA. But the quality of the manager, it's scary to think immediately after draft day to move on from somebody when you believed in them and that's why you put them on your squad.
Mm-hmm. Well, speaking of people who were put on a squad and have faith, JD Martinez was added to Ari's team before he signed with the team. He is now signed with my New York Metropolitans, 1 year, $12 million. Some of it is deferred, but the bat that the Mets so badly needed in the middle of their lineup now comes to Queens. with JD Martinez.
I love this for Ari. And I know this was probably a pick that he didn't make because he was already gone, I think, at that point. But the idea now that he could just slide JD Martinez into his left field spot before opening day is absolutely brilliant for Ari. I like that a lot. And I just continue to look at Ari's roster. And nobody had a more interesting week than Ari Nisman because he had the Yamamoto start, Joe. Then Blake Snell signs with the Giants, and then JD Martinez signs with your Metropolitans. This is really, really fun for Ari, especially for some reason him having left field eligibility. And he had Giancarlo Stanton hit 3 bombs in a spring training game. My only question to you is, who do you see JD Martinez taking a roster spot for? Do you think it's going to be Tyler Ward? Do you think it's going to be Andrew Vaughn?
Probably, if I was to just throw out one of those two guys, yeah, I would probably say Taylor Ward. He's only left field eligible. I feel like JD Martinez is better than him, and other than hitting in the same lineup as Mike Trout, doesn't really bring a whole lot to the table where JD Martinez could be 30 homers and 100 RBIs. So you probably,
Yeah.
I would want to play that guy over both of them, to be honest with you. They're both bad, but I think the first base eligibility will keep Vaughn on the roster more than Ward.
Yeah, that makes sense to me.
Yeah. The Reds are all of a sudden very banged up and need to get some guys healthy. Bobby's TJ Friedel is going to miss an extended period with a right wrist fracture. Jimmy's Matt McClain is going for a second opinion on his shoulder to determine the severity of the injury. The MRI on Wednesday found something, and surgery is not out of the realm of possibility. So we are seeing guys fall from the Reds roster in a hurry. You add in Noelvi Marte's suspension, and all of a sudden the infield is in need of help. So they went out and got Santiago Espinal for a minor leaguer to fill in for those guys. The Reds, you don't have a piece of this infield, but how are you seeing this thing shake out for opening day now?
Well, I think it stinks for Jimmy because of the fact he used a 5th-round draft pick on Matt McClain. So to use that draft day capital and now lose that guy for what sounds like, Joe, an extended look if we're talking about shoulder surgery. So who knows when we'll see him, if at all, in the 2024 season with so many guys being able to manipulate that roster in the infield. But the thing is, what Jimmy did that was really smart, Joe, when you look at his roster build, was he has Gleyber Torres, he has Suarez, he has Jeremy Pena, he has a bunch of guys. He has Jung, who looks like he's going to be in the lineup on opening day. So as much as this hurts because it's a 5th-round selection for Jimmy, he has the ability to cover this up with really good names. And I think that speaks a lot to a former champion's roster build.
No doubt. No doubt. The ability to lose your 5th rounder before the first pitch of the season and still be able to fill in and get a roster together with some really good, maybe star players is testament to how he plays this game and the former champion that he is. Moving on to the Twins, who are also banged up. They're more on the pitching side. They have 3 pitchers going down. Caleb Thielbar has a strained hamstring. Anthony DeSclafani has the dreaded forearm strain. And the concern may be that he needs to head for Tommy John. But Josh, both of those guys are free agents. Josh's Yohan Duran has a moderate oblique strain. He's going to start the season on the IL as well. This hurts.
Yeah.
What round did he get him in? 4th?
Yeah, he took him in the 4th round. And as everybody knows in the bigs, that's what you have to do when you're talking about a top tier closer. And to add insult to injury, his handcuff happens to be on his brother's team, who he lost to in the finals last year. So that was certainly a double dip for Josh. But when you talk about Josh's team, and I love his team, right? I think this is a fantastic team. Mookie Betts also stole a base, Joe, in that first game that got called back because of umpire interference, which the umpires were interfering a lot with pitch clocks and the ridiculous strike zone at times, but that one didn't make a whole lot of sense. I think Mookie's going to steal a lot more bags this year. You and I talked about that on Stacking Commons, but Josh did such a good job putting Paul Sewald on his roster, Kenley Jensen, and all the other relievers on the Red Sox who might have gotten saved if Jansen started the year on the IL. He also has Devin Williams, which is really interesting. That's a blow for Josh. What's going to be interesting to me when you look at his roster, Joe, is he's going to have Duran on the IL to start the year. He's also going to have Devin Williams. He's going to have Braxton Garrett on the IL. He's going to have to rock Braxton Garrett on the bench. That hurts to start the season. Braxton Garrett is that type of talent with upside that you have to have him rocking on your bench. But the Devin Williams injury is very interesting because of the fact when you guys broke down Josh's team, you, Jason, and Ben, Benny had talked about how he doesn't believe this guy is going to be a closer when he returns. If he's healthy, I do believe he closes games for the Brewers, especially to rebuild his stock, Joe, because this is a player that is going to get moved and play on another squad. So I think once he does get back, he closes games for the Brewers if he's healthy and eventually gets traded to another team, maybe a contender. Maybe he's on the Dodgers. Maybe he's on the Rangers. We'll see. But I think this guy absolutely will get some saves for Josh. But it stinks going into opening day, already having 2 IL guys and another guy on your bench.
Speaking specifically about Devin Williams, I think you're right in that when he comes back, he will be the closer. The only thing I would say is that if somebody like Abner Uribe goes out there and absolutely drops it this season and is out of this world, there's no guarantee of that, right? At the same time, the Brewers have aspirations of winning that division. They have aspirations of going to the playoffs, even if they did take a step back on the offensive side. They're coming with a lot of young kids this year. And if that gels together the right way, they could certainly compete. So if Devin Williams comes back and they're in the race, I don't see them moving him. I think they just stick him at the back end of the pen. And dependent upon how good either Joel Payamps or Abner Uribe are, that will determine whether or not he gets the ninth inning back. I think especially with the injury that he has, the stress, the vertebrae injury, they're going to want to bring him along slowly as well and probably, have him build up over a longer period of time. So he is going to miss a lot of time. This significant moderate oblique strain for Duran also derails what would have been a really nasty closer situation on Josh's team.
Oh, yeah. And it's almost still nasty when you look at it with Jensen, Sewald, and once Duran gets back. But yeah, you're absolutely right about that. Josh did a fantastic team build going into the 2024 season, trying to get back to the finals.
Yeah. We move on to the sad news, Jay, that Jackson Holliday, in fact, is being sent down to AAA to start the season. Sad news for you, but happy news for Jimmy, as Wyatt Langford has made the Rangers opening day roster. Now, as far as Holliday is concerned, I think this might be service manipulation, but it does guarantee playing time for guys like Ramon Urias and Jordan Westberg. But my question really is, where's Wyatt Langford going to play? Is he taking Tavares' job in center field, or is he going to be DH only?
I think a little bit of both. The numbers he's put up so far in the spring, and Jimmy's only going to have him at utility for that first week. And I think Wilmer Flores might be the guy that he sends to the wire once he activates Langford from his NA spot. But yeah, I think it's going to be a combination of those two things. And boy, oh boy, what a bat for Jimmy to have. And we'll see if the numbers in the spring translate. But no matter what, it's still a really sexy, sexy guy to have on your team build going into the 2024 season. So I think it's a little bit of everything. And of course, they have an issue at first base with who's going to get those at bats with Lowe on the shelf to start the year. Mm-hmm. And that's going to be a combination of maybe Jared Walsh, maybe Duran, and what have you. But a very interesting Ron Washington situation to have out there in Texas. Or Bruce Bochy, rather.
Bruce Bochy, I was going to say. I was like, Ron Washington was the third base coach, I think, for a while, but now he is on the division rival Angels. Finally, Yuri Perez, Costas's, I guess, number 2 or 3 starter, has elbow inflammation and will start the season on the IL. So you're hedging your bet with Sixto Sanchez to make the rotation. I hedged my bet with Max Meyer in the late rounds for an NA slot. How are you feeling about this Yuri Perez injury? How big of a deal is it for Costas and Sixto? Did we not learn anything from 2021?
Well, wait a second. I brought him on my roster, Joe, because I lost Matt Manning to AAA today, but I didn't bring him on for a rotation piece. I brought him to be an SP reliever and to see what he has to say out of the pen for that squad, and perhaps even maybe net some saves along the way. It looks like he's throwing some heat this spring. And for those of you who we all played together in 21, remember all that controversy when Frank dropped him after the draft and I scooped him up. Frank happened to be right, even though everyone jumped down Frank's throat for some reason when he drafted him and then dropped him. But Sanchez has been banged up now for a couple years. He's throwing heat. I like him out of the pen, Joe. I don't see him as a rotation piece right now. They'd have to stretch him out. I like him more for my club as a reliever. But for Costas and Perez, look, that stinks for him. He has George Kirby, which is really nice. But Costas is going to find himself in a pickle. When you look at this squad, Romano's arm is barking. Swanson's arm is barking. Thankfully, he put Yimi Garcia on his squad as well to combat that if Romano and Swanson were to miss time to start the year. But if that's the case, off the jump, it could be a lot of guys hitting that IL spot for him, which stinks for Costas. But he did put a lot of quality arms with George Kirby at the top and Skubal and some other guys. So we'll have to see.
It does hurt, and it hurts that this young kid that was a phenom last year got sent down to AAA and then came back up and was still really good, is now going to start the season on the IL. We're not going to be able to see a full season of this kid. Though I don't think that we were going to see 180 innings anyway out of this kid. I think this is kind of what's to be expected. The question I have is how long is this going to be? We don't know that yet. But if this stretches into May and June, that's really going to be a devastating blow to Costas' roster.
Oh, absolutely. And think about the Marlins, Cabrera, Braxton Garrett, Sandy's on the shelf all year. You know, now all of a sudden trading away Pablo, and I know you got the defending batting title guy in your roster, but you know what that organization has had to deal with pitching injuries is absolutely insane. And we talked about Sanchez, another top prospect who has been on the shelf for a good many years. But boy, oh boy, we're going to have to see. It is a blow for Costas. I think he could weather that ship. It just has to be whether or not some of those other guys hit the IL before opening day or not. And Joe, when it comes to free agency so far, what we've seen, we had those 2 days where we had a bunch of free moves. I certainly took advantage of it. I got up bright and early. Has anything left free agency right now up until this point that you go, oh, I like that this guy ended up on a squad?
Yeah, Yimi Garcia is definitely a rosterable player. On top of the fact that he might be now closing out games for the Blue Jays if Romano was hurt. I think that was a great pickup by Costas. I think there were a couple of other guys off the top of my head. I don't have them, but it was wild first day there when everything was free. That was a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah, you know, Matt Manning, I ended up being wrong. He was somebody that I was targeting on draft day. Then there was a numbers crunch, and then the news came today that he was sent down to AAA. So I had to pivot quickly because look, I don't want to be 3 moves in before Thursday against Mike Haber, but I also have to be 3 moves in if I'm going to try to compete against that guy. With Jackson Holiday now being down, I picked up Jason Hayward. Before Lee gets center field eligible, Jason Hayward might be my starting center fielder because Colton Cowser, as great of a spring as he's had, right? This guy's at bats are not guaranteed with how deep that Orioles lineup is and that bench. So it's a nice story. I like his triple eligibility in the outfield, but I can't bank on that, especially Friday the Orioles don't play, I'm already thinking ahead for next week. I know the commissioner had texted me concerned that I was already 3 moves in. Worry about your own team, commissioner. I love you, Benny. But, when you're playing Mike Haber, Joe, you can't be messing around.
No doubt. He's the defending champion for a reason. He is one of the greatest that has done this game in this league, and you've got your work cut out for you. Not to mention, the last time you guys started off against each other on an opening day, I think he whooped you pretty good.
He sure did. He sure did. And I remember that. And that was the year he went wire to wire. And then
Mm-hmm.
Benny ended up winning the championship. Another move here that I like a lot when I'm looking at all these guys that left free agency, I like that Mike picked up Gill, and he's going to be the fifth starter on the Yankees, perhaps. Look,
Mm-hmm.
we talk about fifth starters across the board, and there's a lot of those guys still floating around in free agency. But Mike has the fifth starter on the Yankees right now. We all think that's the leading guy to grab it. I think that was a smart play by Mike.
Yeah, I agree. And anybody who's going to get innings on a team with that kind of offense backing him up is in line for a good number of wins. Hopefully, he's able to succeed in this opportunity he may be getting. And yeah, you're right. Mike picking that guy up, of course he did, because it's Mike Haber.
It's Mike Haber. He gets to root for Aaron Judge all year, which that's going to be a lot of fun for him. When
Mm-hmm.
you look at your roster now, Joe, it's not even a week removed. What do you look at and go, oh, I'm really happy that's happening? And what's the one thing you go, I wish that was different, or I went a different way? I'll answer the same question and be honest with you after you go.
Okay. I love the versatility I got at the back end of the draft with Kike Hernandez and Zach McKinstry, but I don't know that those guys are promised any playing time. So I'm concerned that if neither of them are promised like any significant playing time, that I'm going to have to go into free agency and find some more depth. And I've noticed that the outfield depth in free agency isn't exactly the best at the moment. So I'm hoping at least McKinstry can get some ABs and I can hang him on the roster and get Kike off the roster from the draft. He was obviously only a play for the Seoul Series, but I might need him to be that versatile backup infield outfield option too. So I'm just sort of waiting that out to see what's going on. I love the fact that Walker Buehler should be back in mid-May. Brusdar Gratterall going down opened up a second IL spot for me, or filled the second IL spot for me right now. He should be back in the first week or so. So Garrett Cole will slide in there. I still love my pitching. Even with both of those horses down, I still really like my pitching.
Oh, it's a fantastic staff when you think about Framber, Cole, and Bueller at some point during the summer. That's going to be really dirty. And also, I like all the guys you have surrounding Phillips. Are there a lot of guys that are going to get saves? No. But knowing you, you'll figure that out along the way. You'll make a trade or two. You'll figure it out. I know you. And you're right about the outfield depth. I thought personally the outfield depth was light going into the draft. And that's why Yoshida and Suzuki were both targets of mine, as well as Lee. Not only did they do what I wanted them to do for my roster build, but I didn't like a lot of the guys. And I thought the drop off was extremely severe after the second tier. And now you see it in free agency. And that's why you and I were texting about Jason Hayward after the second game of the Seoul Series. It's why he's on my roster now, because of the fact that if a guy has dual eligibility and is guaranteed at bats and he's on a good team, you kind of need that guy. And when you look at all the team builds, most of the rosters, their benches have multiple eligibility guys. I
Yeah.
did it with one of my first moves with Perdomo. Everybody wants it to be Jordan Lauer. I get it, right? But I look at a guy who's triple eligible in the infield, had a really nice on base percentage a year ago, stole 16 bags, had over 20 doubles. In spring training games, he's batting second behind Corbin Carroll. I'll keep that guy on my bench for a little while and see what's good.
Yeah. And if he bats ninth, well, that just means he's hitting in front of Corbin Carroll, which is another fantastic spot to be in. Speaking of fantastic spots, this has been a fantastic spot. Jay, thank you so much for being here with me, man.
I love it. Talking fantasy baseball with you sparks all the joy in my life.
Guys, thank you so much for being here. Again, we would not have this show if it wasn't for what you guys do in this league. So thank you so much for being a part of it. Drop a follow or a subscribe where you need to so that we don't have to let you know when we upload these things. Use the algorithms to your advantage and get this podcast as it goes live. Thank you guys so much again. Until next time, guys, it's been real. It's been fun, and it is always real fun in the bigs. We'll see you next time.